The ocean swallowed it whole. No distress signal, no emergency beacon, no final transmission. One moment, the K-129 was a fully operational Soviet nuclear submarine, armed, crewed, and on patrol. The next moment, silence. 98 men, 3 nuclear missiles, 2 nuclear torpedoes. Gone. Somewhere, 3 miles beneath the Pacific. It was still down there. The Soviets searched for months. 100 ships, submarines, aircraft, nothing. The ocean had taken the K-129 and refused to give her back. Eventually, Moscow did what governments do when they lose something they can never admit losing. They quietly stopped looking. But the Americans had been listening the whole time. Here's what nobody outside a handful of CIA officers knew in 1968. The United States had a secret network of hydrophones stitched across the Pacific floor. Microphones, essentially, listening for exactly this kind of event. They heard the K-129 die. 3 distinct implosions, deep and terrible, somewhere northwest of Hawaii. The computers triangulated, the analysts mapped. And within weeks of the Soviet Navy giving up their search, the CIA knew almost exactly where the submarine was resting. 16 of 500 feet down. Deeper than Mount Everest is tall. Deeper than any human being could survive. Deeper than any ship could reach. And sitting in that darkness, perfectly preserved by the cold and the pressure, nuclear warheads, cryptographic equipment, the codebooks that unlocked Soviet naval communications. The intelligence value was almost beyond calculation. If the US could read Soviet naval codes, they could track every submarine in the Pacific. They could anticipate every move. In the chess match of the Cold War, this was the other player's entire strategy, sitting unguarded on the ocean floor. Someone had to make a call. Do we try to get it? The answer somehow was yes. The problem wasn't political, it wasn't diplomatic, it was physics. Every engineer the CIA brought in ran the same numbers and came back with the same answer. It cannot be done. 2,000 tons of shattered steel, 16,500 feet of water above it, pressures exceeding 7,000 pounds per square inch. No cable on Earth was long enough, no crane was powerful enough, no ship could generate the lift. And even if you could somehow design a system capable of that lift, you'd have to do it quietly, in international waters, in the middle of the Cold War, with Soviet naval vessels potentially watching from the surface. The operation would take years to plan, hundreds of millions of dollars to build, an entirely fictional cover story to maintain, and one catastrophic engineering failure could expose everything, triggering an international incident that could escalate into something far worse than a stolen submarine. The CIA gave it the green light anyway. They called it Project Azorian, and to pull it off, they needed the perfect frontman. Someone so famously eccentric, so notoriously secretive, that nobody would question his involvement in a bizarre, expensive, unexplainable deep-sea venture. They called Howard Hughes. Hughes publicly announced he was building a revolutionary deep-sea mining vessel to harvest manganese nodules from the Pacific floor. The Hughes Glomar Explorer, 618 feet long, 63,000 tons, the most sophisticated ocean-going vessel ever constructed. And it was completely believable because deep-sea mining was a genuine industry ambition in the early 1970s. Other companies were exploring it. Scientists were excited about it. Nobody looked twice. Except the ship wasn't built to mine anything. Below the waterline, hidden from public view, was the moon pool, a massive retractable opening in the hull through which the entire operation would be conducted. Engineers designed a capture vehicle, a mechanical claw the size of an office building, weighing 2,000 tons on its own, equipped with hydraulic arms capable of gripping a submarine's shattered hull. To lower it, they built 3 miles of steel pipe. Not cable, pipe. Because only rigid pipe could handle the tension loads without stretching unpredictably. Each section would be manually connected, one at a time, and fed through the moon pool into the ocean below. 4 years, $500 million, hundreds of workers, most of whom genuinely believed they were on a mining operation. The CIA embedded officers throughout the crew as company representatives. Every instrument, every crane, every mechanical system had a plausible mining explanation. The cover held for the entire construction period. By summer 1974, the Glomar Explorer was on station, target coordinates locked. 3 miles of water between them and the prize. Think about who was down there. 98 Soviet sailors, young men, most of them, conscripts who had kissed their families goodbye at some naval base in Vladivostok and gone to sea on a submarine they were told was invincible. They never came home. Their families were never told the truth. The Soviet government couldn't even acknowledge the K-129 existed without admitting what it was carrying. For 6 years, those men had rested in the dark. Now, above them, a crew of American engineers, also young, also far from home, also working under a kind of pressure most people will never understand, were attempting something they'd been told was impossible. They had staked years of their careers on math and metal and hope. And on the surface, Soviet naval vessels had appeared. A tugboat, then a surveillance ship, circling, watching, taking photographs. The Americans kept performing. Mining equipment operated visibly on deck, sensor data was fabricated, coffee was served, shifts rotated. The charade continued for weeks while, deep below, section by section, the pipe string descended toward the wreck, and the claws engaged. For hours, operators guided by grainy black and white camera footage, 3 miles of signal delay, slowly closed the capture vehicle's arms around the broken hull of the K-129. Then the lift began. 3 miles of pipe, under millions of pounds of tension, hauling 2,000 tons of Soviet steel upward through the darkness, foot by foot, hour by hour. Then the hull cracked. The K-129 had been shattered since 1968. The structural damage was catastrophic and invisible until it was too late. Somewhere in the ascent, sections of the submarine broke apart. Portions fell back into the abyss, including, almost certainly, the most valuable sections. The nuclear warheads, the primary cryptographic vaults. The Americans recovered roughly 1/3 of the K-129. And then they did something nobody expected. They gave the Soviet sailors a burial at sea, on camera, in full military uniform, with honors. 6 men recovered from the wreckage were given a ceremony their own government had never given them. The footage was classified for decades. When it was finally released, you can see American naval officers standing at attention, saluting men who were technically their enemies, committing them back to the ocean with more dignity than they ever received from Moscow. The CIA never fully confirmed what intelligence was recovered. The codebooks, the warhead designs, what Project Azorian actually yielded remains, in significant part, classified to this day. But here's what we know for certain. Engineers designed a system that reached 3 miles into the ocean and physically grabbed a nuclear submarine in 1974, under surveillance, under pressure that should have made the entire concept laughable. They were told it was impossible. They did it anyway. And somewhere in the Pacific, the rest of the K-129 is still down there, in deeper darkness than before, broken, waiting, carrying secrets that 2 superpowers have spent half a century pretending don't exist. The ocean kept its half, we kept ours.